How's it going, everybody? My name is Philip, and today I'm going to be reacting to the bizarre stadium that bankrupted a football club. Now, that just sounds bizarre. It's very weird, because normally if you're going to get a stadium, you're doing pretty good. So I think it's a bit interesting that you build a stadium and then you go bankrupt. So I'm interested in what the story is behind this. I haven't brought out an old San Jose Earthquakes jersey. I don't know why. I just felt like it. You can even see you could kind of see there's like there's supposed to be an actual white Adidas little thing right here. It's washed off. I don't know why I chose they're not even a sponsor anymore. Like who even has Amway anymore? I don't know. I just felt like wearing it. It even has the old patch, and it comes with the old US. Okay, it's not the old. I mean, it is old, but back when they put the flags on the arms. Anyways, I'm interested. So, is this team still around? Because normally when I think of bankrupt, at least I think of or when I think a team goes bankrupt, I think that they no longer exist. Or is it that they do exist, but now they're in a lot of debt? I also don't know how bankruptcy works. Doesn't declaring bankruptcy clear all your debt or something? But then you're broke as fuck? I don't know. I should probably look up. Hold on. Let me actually look up the definition of bankruptcy. Okay, so bankruptcy, according to Google, is a legal process through which people or other entities who cannot repay debts or creditors may seek relief from some or all of their debts. Okay, so I don't know. I'm interested to see what team it is. And I'm interested to see how everything came about. It's always fun to listen to these stories, as long as it's not my team. I mean, my team, the San Jose Earthquakes, literally just built a stadium in 2016, and thankfully it didn't bankrupt us. Also, though, we have like a limit of 18,000. You know, like when you look at all the new stadiums that are coming out, they're all 20,000 plus. It's like, and we have this whole open area that they could close off a little bit to add like maybe a couple hundred seating, just to get a little bit more seats in there. Granted, it would ruin the view because we could literally look out that side of the stadium and see the San Jose airport, and you can kind of see the hills and everything and see the airplanes taking off. That's fine and all. But if I want to watch airplanes taking off, then I'll go across the street and watch airplanes taking off. Close it off a bit, add some more seating. Don't close it fully off because, you know, here in the Bay Area, we have the biggest outdoor bar in North America. I don't know where the biggest outdoor bar ever is, but just I don't know. I feel like there's still a lot that the Quakes can do, but I don't know. But let's check this out. I probably don't think I've heard this team. Just looking at the picture, I probably have never heard the team.
Almost 20 years ago, during the early 2000s, two teams in the north of England built enormous state-of-the-art stadiums in relation to the level of football they played at. These two teams, namely Hull City and Darlington.
I've heard of Hull, never heard of Darlington, so I'm guessing the other team. The team I haven't heard of is the team that failed miserably.
Both competed in the old third division at the time, now known as League Two, and both were building all-seater stadiums capable of holding 25,000 people, making them among the largest football stadiums in England outside of the Premier League. Hull City moved into their new ground, the KC Stadium, midway through the 2002-03 campaign, a season that they would end just one place above Darlington. In fact, in the Tigers' final game at their old home ground, Boothbury Park, they were beaten 1-0 by Darlington in an underwhelming farewell to a once great, but now deeply decrepit old ground. Darlington's stadium move came just 8 months later, right at the start of the 2003-04 campaign, as they played their first game at the Reynolds Arena. Over the next decade, Hull City's new ground helped propel the club to heights they had never previously reached. 3 promotions in 5 seasons secured one of the fastest ascents from English football's basement division to the Premier League in the history of the English game, and the Casey Stadium would be packed to the rafters in English football's top flight every week. Darlington's new stadium did little to lift the Quakers' fortunes.
Hold up. Please tell me that this is like a charity match, or like this is so early on that there's barely anyone in there. Because, ouch. And again, I understand League 2, not the best. But...
Darlington performed worse in their first season after moving to their new ground than they had done the previous year in their old one, and they would go on to taste 2 relegations, finishing bottom of League 2, and being dumped out of the conference, without tasting a single promotion in their grand new establishment.
How many people were averaging... what was their average attendance? Because... I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. Like, I don't know what, like... Yeah. Because I know that when you get demoted... Or, okay, relegated... when you get relegated from the Premier League, don't they, like... You're only allowed a certain amount of seats? Because when I was watching Villa, when they were playing in the Championship, there were seating... that was literally blocked off with advertisements. Like, so does the Championship, they have to, okay, the max amount that you're allowed to have is this amount, like 20,000. You know, so they had to take away, like, sections of seating here and there. Granted, it was, no, because I was trying to think, I was about to say, no, it was during the pandemic, but no, it was, like, again, when they were in the Championship, so a couple years back.
Instead, the cost of erecting this monument to human stupidity would cost the club not just their Football League status, but also their very existence.
Damn.
3 months ago, the man behind Darlington's enormous, baffling white elephant of a stadium, George Reynolds, died at the age of 84. Reynolds was many different things, to many different people, and at many different times. To some, he was simply a crook. To others, a saviour. Reynolds has been described as a gangster, a character, a criminal, a hero, a villain, and pretty much everything in between. So in today's video, we're heading to the northeast of England, to a town that was once home to the world's first permanent steam locomotive-powered passenger railway, in an attempt to unpick the truth behind a man who genuinely used to unpick locks and blast open safes for a living, to try and make sense of one of the most bizarre football stadiums ever built, and to examine the legacy that both he and it have left behind. For 120 years, there was only one place that Darlington Football Club called home, and that was Feetham's. Amateur football had actually been played on the site of the historic ground as early as the 1860s, but it was in 1883, at the same time that Darlington Football Club was founded, that it became a more structured sporting venue. Before the football club arrived, immediately adjacent to the site of the football stadium was a cricket field, which remained following the football club's arrival. That gave Feetham's the unusual quirk of football fans entering through the turnstiles and then having to walk all the way around a cricket field before reaching either their seats or their position on the terraces.
That does kind of suck.
Feetham's was also famous for the fact that it was very easy for supporters to make their way around the ground, and given that there was typically no lack of space, supporters would often swap seats or standing positions at half-time in order to be behind or closer to the goal that Darlington were attacking. In 1907, the England amateur national football team, which was a separate entity to the actual England team, beat the Netherlands 12-2 at Feetham's in front of a packed-out crowd.
Jeez.
Though the FA don't consider this to have been an official England international, because it was England's amateur team, the Dutch FA do consider it to have been a full Netherlands international.
You just got spanked 12-2. Don't consider it an actual first team. an actual international. Consider it a youth exercise. My gosh. Ow. Nah.
Meaning that it is officially the heaviest defeat that the Netherlands has ever suffered, and it took place in Darlington. The stadium's more regular tenants, Darlington FC, were founding members of the Northern League, before joining the Football League in 1921. The club's finest achievement within the league game would arrive shortly after that, in the 1924-25 season, when they won the 3rd Division North title, winning promotion to English football's second tier, where they would go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Wednesday, Derby County, and Chelsea as equals. Darlington survived for one season before dropping back down into the 3rd Division North, where they remained until the creation of a nationwide 4th Division. Darlington lost their league status for the first time in the 1988-89 season, when the club was facing significant financial difficulties before former Aston Villa striker and England international Brian Little came along to turn their fortunes around. Little guided the Quakers to back-to-back promotions, earning himself a job at Leicester City, but as soon as he left, Darlington were relegated again. Back.
Oh. Okay, so one thing I feel like, when you leave your position, you need to make sure you have someone there that's not going to fuck it up. I would think. But maybe if you just don't care enough about your position, that specific position, you're just like, yeah, who cares? They could figure it out. Or maybe they should have learned something from them. You want to be successful? Just come on.
Down into English football's 4th tier, which had been newly renamed as the 3rd Division due to the breakaway of the Premier League from the Football League over that same summer. Darlington came close to securing a return to the 3rd tier, then known as the 2nd Division, and now League One, when they reached a playoff final in 1996. But they suffered a narrow 1-0 defeat to a Plymouth Argyle side managed by Neil Warnock at the old Wembley Stadium, in front of 43,431 fans.
Damn.
By the summer of 1999, just 3 years later, Darlington were on the brink. The club had debts totalling several £million and absolutely no ability to meet those obligations.
Okay, so I'm sorry I'm pausing this so much. So, like, how long were these debts good for? Like, they had to pay them back at what point? Because, I mean, okay, so yeah, 90s, mid to late 90s is when I guess all this was happening. And so, if they went bankrupt early 2000s, then okay, then maybe, yeah. Okay.
The threat was existential, but out of nowhere arrived a saviour with a broad northeast accent, a large Rolls Royce, and a colourful past to give it its respectable title. A man who described himself as being a combination of Richard Branson, Brian Clough, and Norman Stanley Fletcher, the last of those being the inmate protagonist portrayed by Ronnie Barker in the prison-based UK sitcom Porridge, for those of you who don't know. Reynolds claimed to have a net worth of £300 million. And he arrived with some pretty bold plans for the struggling 4th tier outfit. And yes, that is Oprah alongside him. On day one, Reynolds paid off the club's debts, claiming to have done so by writing a cheque that was worth more than £5 million.
Okay, that sounds nice, but okay, I'm still a bit hung up on he claimed that he was wealthy. I don't know about that. So if he actually did pay off the debts, great, good job. What else did you do other than build a stadium that literally killed you guys?
Also on day one, Reynolds laid out his 3-point plan for the club, which he hoped to achieve within the space of just 5 years. The first aim was to pay off the club's debts, and then not to incur any further debts throughout the course of his tenure.
That's fair.
The second, which raised one or two eyebrows, was to build a 25,000-seater stadium, and the third, which provoked mild amusement more than any other response, was to get Darlington into the Premier League.
Okay, that's not bad. you might want to look further down the line than just 5 years. Because you need to build stuff. Like, as someone that loves to take like the worst team in League 1, League 2, all the way up to the Premier League, it takes a while. Now, obviously you could take the easy route, like in FIFA, what I'm talking about. I don't do it professionally because I wouldn't be in this room doing this if I did that professionally. But like, because you got to build a youth system, you got to build good enough training facilities if you don't have them already. Then you got to have a stadium, which, okay, that was part of his plan. And then you got to make sure your fans are connected to the team enough that they want to support them well enough, which, I mean, I'm guessing that the fans care about their team. And then you got to work your ass off to get the players in to bring this club out of the basement. Which is tough enough as it is, because knowing... listen, okay, I keep using FIFA as a reference point because, again, that's how I am used to it. It's tough enough just to get people to come to your team when you're in League 2. You got to get like all the youth players from every team. It's like, he's decent enough. Get him on loan. Loan with option to buy, maybe. And it's just, there's a lot of stuff you got to do. It's going to take more than 5 years. Granted, he has the cheat code of having millions of dollars, but, you know, a lot of times people want to play in that top tier. They don't want to work their way up. You know, they don't want to wait a couple years to be able to be on that team in the Premier League. You know, look at Grealish. You know, he wanted to play in the Champions League, right? So he left Villa, and he went to City. It sucks, but we did get £100 million for it, so I mean that's not too bad, I guess. But it is what it is, right?
Reynolds' stadium plans were largely dismissed as being first-day bravado to impress the press present at his inauguration. Yeah, I know, easy for me to say. Darlington were in need of a new stadium. Following 120 years at Feetham's, whatever the emotional attachment, few fans denied that the old ground had seen better days. Despite attempted renovations in 1997, the club was fighting a losing battle, and if they hadn't been so cash-strapped, it is likely a previous administration would have been exploring new sites. The problem at Feetham's wasn't so much the crumbling infrastructure, but more the perennially waterlogged pitch, which was rendered virtually unplayable throughout the wetter winter months. Reynolds didn't back down from his promises in the coming weeks though, maintaining that he would build, well, sometimes a 25,000...
That's how you know it went wrong. The name in the background. Okay, sorry. I mean, never mind, fuck it. Trump was a dumbass.
Sometimes a 27,000-seater stadium, and reached the summit of the English game. Reynolds' wife, Susan, declared upon his arrival at the club that failure is not a word in George's vocabulary. Apparently, nor was reality. Reynolds' bold plan was built upon the supposition that he could replicate what he had done in the kitchen worktop business, his most lucrative business venture, within the world of football.
What?
Though he claimed a net worth of, well, again, sometimes 275 million, sometimes 300 million pounds, plenty of people disputed that figure, and suspected that it may be rather fanciful. Reynolds was certainly a very wealthy man at that time though, having just sold a sizable stake in his kitchen worktop business for £32.2 million, which many believe to be the bulk of whatever his real net worth actually was. Reynolds had taken the kitchen worktop sector by storm by pricing his worktops at 50% of the price of his competition, without compromising, or so he claimed, on quality. It proved to be a big success, as the tycoon hoovered up a significant percentage of market share, and Reynolds said that he could do the same in football. His plan, as he outlined it, was to offer the cheapest tickets in the Football League, starting at £5, and go...
No, that's not how that works. No. That's not how that works. I'm not gonna go down the road to the Oakland Roots game, because the tickets are cheaper when I can go to my Earthquakes games. That's not how that works. Like, listen, I'll support Oakland Roots because I've always been a big supporter of the Oakland teams. But, like, my team is my team. San Jose is my team. Now, okay, if my team is not playing, the same day or night that the Oakland Roots are playing, and I want to go watch some soccer or some football, I'll go. I don't care. I'll go to an Oakland game. But if they're playing at the same time, then I'm going to my Earthquakes game. I'm going to San Jose games. Granted, there's also the big difference of if my team's playing like shit, bottom of the league, and I'm not excited to watch them. Like, I want to watch them, but I know I'm going to get pissed off because you see them walking around and you're like, what are you doing? What the hell are you doing? It's like, okay, you know what? Oakland, they might be close to a playoff spot. They've been playing pretty well. I'll set the Earthquakes game to record, and I might go to Oakland game. Even though it'd still be very weird. But you can't, no. Because no City fan's going to want to go to their game just because, their fucking tickets are cheaper. The fuck, dude?
Going up to £10 for adults, depending on position within the ground, and freezing those prices, regardless of inflation, demand, or which league Darlington were playing in, for at least the next 20 years. This, he hoped, would attract at least 15,000 fans to Darlington. 10,000, either existing or neutral fans from within Darlington and its catchment area, by which I think he meant the 300,000 plus odd people with Darlington postcodes, along with an additional 5,000 football fans that he hoped to attract from Middlesbrough, Sunderland, and Newcastle United.
No, they have their own teams that have been doing pretty well. A Newcastle fan's not going to go to Darlington. What? Just because it's cheaper, it's not their team. Jeez. You're supposed to grow it. Have your players go to schools, hold clinics, do little things here and there in the community.
Reynolds stated upon his arrival in 1999, after outlining these plans and comparing football to his kitchen worktop business, that,
Idiot.
quote, people keep on saying to me that football's different.
But
it's not different.
It is!
End quote. Spoiler alert, it is different. I'm sure most of you already know this, but just in case, people tend to be more attached to, say, Sunderland or Newcastle United Football Club than they are to a more expensive brand of kitchen worktop before you offer them a cheaper alternative. This, apparently, was news to George Reynolds. At this point, it's probably worth just talking a little bit about George Reynolds himself
Is he not
as
a fan?
character, his past, and how he amassed such a large fortune, even if not potentially quite as large as he claimed, by the late 1990s.
Is he not a fan of the
Reynolds
sport?
had a tough upbringing. Born in Sunderland's Dock Street East in 1936, Reynolds' early childhood came during the midst of World War II, where Sunderland was subject to intense bombing campaigns by the Luftwaffe. The war ended when Reynolds was 9 years old, but at the age of 8, he had been put up for orphanage. Reynolds remained in an orphanage from the age of 8 through to 16, at an orphanage that doubled up as a workhouse. When, at the age of 16, illiterate and with no support network, Reynolds walked out into the world as an adult, he walked straight into a life of crime. It was steal or starve at that age, as Reynolds put it.
I mean, that's fair.
His first major criminal venture, following a few years stealing cigarettes and smuggling watches, involved buying a Mr. Softy ice cream van and using it to smuggle gelignite, an explosive substance used for safecracking. Reynolds wasn't bringing in the gelignite for someone else, he blew up the safes himself.
What?
This landed Reynolds in a bit of trouble in his mid to late 20s when he was arrested and jailed for 4 years for safecracking, handling explosives, burglary, and theft. Reynolds described his first stint in prison as having been a blessing since, as an inmate, he came into contact with a priest who convinced him to study, and Reynolds finally learnt to read and write. Reynolds described himself as being a changed man upon his release, though he had made quite a lot of money whilst on the inside by selling contraband. Nonetheless, following his 4-year stint, Reynolds did establish some legitimate businesses, including fruit machines, fitting nightclubs and bars, and of course, his kitchen worktop business. He did go back to prison briefly in 1970 for burglary, and then again in 1976 for theft, but during the 1990s, Reynolds did start to generate significant cash flow, making him a very wealthy person, particularly following his £40 million plus exit in the late 1990s. As someone who had genuinely come from nothing, Reynolds certainly wasn't the type to hide his wealth. He wore large diamond rings and Rolex watches. He had a fleet of luxury cars, including a Mercedes, a Range Rover, and a Rolls-Royce, and even bought a house opposite the Spice Girls in London, along with a luxury villa in Marbella. His primary residence was undoubtedly Reynolds' most lavish, though, as he bought a great big stately home in County Durham, lived in it for a few years with his first wife, then they divorced, he remarried, and his new wife complained that the mansion stirred too many memories of his ex, so he knocked the entire thing down and rebuilt Whitton Hall at a cost of £7 million. Reynolds and his second wife Susan supposedly travelled around the world in order to furnish their not-so-humble abode, once spending £1 million on interiors in a single afternoon at Harrods. Oh, I almost forgot to mention the £2 million helicopter, the private jet, and luxury super yacht, the ultimate ways to travel and ultimate swinging dick of the rich and famous.
Swinging what? I'm being a dick. Sorry. Why do you need something? Okay, listen. I understand. Came from nothing. Has a lot now. Or then. I guess that's fair. But who needs all this? Like, I don't understand why people need all that, but I mean,
if you're struggling to form an accurate representation of Mr. Reynolds in your head, then how about the story that in his first week as Darlington's owner and chairman, he paid off the mortgages of 7 employees and bought them all brand new Mercedes? There are a myriad of other such tales about George Reynolds, and there are plenty of people who would testify that he was extremely generous, kind, and warm-hearted. There is a danger, however, and one that I am reluctant to fall into, of painting Reynolds as some kind of lovable rogue. You know, sure, he cracked a few safes and nicked a few watches in his time, but he also paid off some mortgages. This would be a mistake, I think. Many in the Northeast would tell you that there was very little that they personally found lovable about George Reynolds. Aside from the crimes he was convicted of, Reynolds has been accused by many of using tactics of bullying and intimidation in order to get his own way, whether that be through threatening to turn up at your house during the night or, you know, actually turning up at your house in the middle of the night. Normally, I would be worried about making these kinds of statements, especially about the dead, if they were just flimsy allegations. But not only are there several of them, including some by journalists in the Northeast who fell on the wrong side of Reynolds by writing unflattering words about him, he actually admitted as much himself, boasting of how he'd go and visit people at their homes at 2:20 in the morning and that they wouldn't want anything to do with him after that. At one point, Reynolds actually warned Darlington fans that he would go around to their houses if they were to criticise him or his family, and he told them to, quote, expect confrontation. He even banned a 16-year-old fanzine editor from attending games because he felt his write-ups were too critical. All things told, and despite his...
You know, I'm sorry, I just realized... Is that their mascot? Is that like a pilgrim? What is that? I understand, it's the 90s, all costumed people, mascots and whatnot are kind of creepy. You know, maybe not so much Disneyland because they got so much money and their things were kind of on point at the time in the 90s. But like that looks like it's almost like early 60s to 70s mascots at Disneyland type. You know, like you could probably find pictures of the Seven Dwarves at Disneyland, and it looks almost like that. And it's a bit fucked. Don't go to people's houses at night. Sorry if I'm a bit too loud on that one. That's creepy, dude. Can't be saying that shit. That's how you get people to not want to come to your games and support you, because you're being too freaking creepy.
Legitimate business successes, Reynolds remained what my granddad would call a rogue. Mind you, my granddad did call every other person that he ever met a rogue, but I think his instincts in this case would be correct. Darlington fans never doubted that Reynolds was somewhat fanciful in his thinking and expectations. They knew that he was a man of vanity and criminality who was full of bluff and bluster, and those who had poor experiences with Reynolds in a business capacity took a particularly dim view of him. But in 1999, when he arrived at the club, most were still excited, and who can blame them? You have to remember, Darlington were headed for extinction when Reynolds arrived, so if he was a bit bonkers, that was fine by most, so long as he did what was best for the club.
Yeah, as long as he saves your team, who cares? You know, but then once your team's like saved, and his crazy antics are kind of being a bit too much now. That's when you're like, okay, I think we need to kind of sell the club now, buddy. You ain't doing much for us now, so maybe sell it. You saved us, but get rid of it now.
With the debts paid off, a promise of no further debt, the club having been brought into Reynolds' successful business empire, and him being one of, if not the, wealthiest owner in the third division, few would have swapped Reynolds for Darlington's previous predicament.
Yeah,
whilst talk of promotion to the Premier League, which Reynolds was obsessed with, was mostly laughed off, promotion from the third division was not. Darlington went from having 610 season ticket holders the season before Reynolds arrived to 2,800 ahead of the 1999-2000 campaign. An incredible 7,000 replica shirts were sold during the off-season, and Darlington were installed by the bookies as 5-1 favourites to win promotion.
Wait, they had... Hold on, I need to go back. I think I heard that wrong. 6,000 or 600?
An incredible 7,000 replica shirts season ticket holders, the C division, which Reynolds was obsessed with, was mostly laughed off. Promotion from the third division was not. Darlington went from having 610 season ticket holders.
Okay, I heard that wrong. I thought he said 6,000. I was like, that's a big miss. They went from 6,000 to 2,000. That's a giant bump. That's pretty bad.
Off-season, and Darlington were installed by the bookies as 5-1 favourites to win promotion. For most of the season, Darlington occupied the automatic promotion places, but on the final day of the season, they dropped down into fourth, consigning the club to the lottery of the playoffs.
Ooh.
Local rivals Hartlepool were comfortably dispatched in the semi-finals before another trip to the old Wembley Stadium to face Peterborough United for a spot in the second division. The game was moved from the Saturday afternoon to the Friday night to make space for a friendly game between England and Brazil, making the game incredibly difficult for Darlington fans to attend, issues that were exacerbated by the awful weather conditions. Constant heavy rain left the Wembley surface not much better than the one at Feetham's, and despite dominating the game, Darlington failed to capitalise, losing 1-0 to Peterborough, who scored from virtually their own attack. This ought to have been a disappointing finish to a generally pretty positive debut campaign.
Ooh.
Darlington had clearly made great...
I just realized he's almost breaking this dude's ankle. Ow. That's a red.
strides, and they were well placed to win promotion the following season. Instead of taking that measured view of the situation, Reynolds decided that he had been paying too much attention to what other people had to say, and that had cost the club promotion, and now he was going to do things his own way. His wife, Susan, became increasingly involved in the club, not always with the most welcome of interventions. At the very first Darlington FC Supporters Club meeting, with the players present, Susan stood up to give a speech in which she accused the Darlington players of throwing games.
No. Don't even... No. No, and especially this is the 90s. Like, what, 90s, early 2000s? This is back when everyone kind of scoffed at women knowing about sports. You know? Like, it still happens a little bit here and there. Because I think the last big one was, it was a football player that made a comment to a reporter. And she was like, I don't see what's so funny about me knowing how to do my job. But, like, again, this is the 90s. And again, I don't know how it is in England or how it was, but I feel like 90s era-ish, you know, women in sports was not as big publicly. I say that, but then the U.S. women won it in 1999. So I should probably just shut up about that. It's just like, you know, that's just how I've always felt. Like way back, like the earlier you go back, you know, like 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, it just feels like women knowing about sports was a bit scoffed at, and everyone was just like, she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. She's a woman. Like, now it's changed. Let me be clear. It's changed. Don't kill me. Please.
The players walked out to the rapturous applause of the fans present. The situation was still recoverable, but in reality, this would be the beginning of the end. Reynolds publicly accused the Darlington players of being greedy and even went so far as to have their wages published in the local newspaper, the Northern Echo. The salaries revealed that Darlington's players were very well remunerated by third division standards, particularly in terms of their bonuses. But the players, unsurprisingly, weren't best pleased about that information being put into the public domain.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Darlington's 4-star men from the previous season, including top scorer Marco Gabbiadini, who had scored a whopping 27 goals, all departed, and the rest of the squad were left feeling rather demoralised.
That's fair. You do not do that to your team. You gotta bring up morale. I mean, they also added that in FIFA as well. Everything's being brought round to FIFA 2022. I am still waiting for that to finally drop. I'm not paying an extra $20 so I can get some stupid Ultimate Team shit. I don't play Ultimate Team. I play Be a Pro and I play Manager Mode. Those are the only ones I play. And fuck Volta, because if I wanted FIFA Street, I would have went and bought FIFA Street. Don't be forcing that shit down my throat. Give me an actual story that doesn't involve indoor soccer, FIFA Street shit. Okay? That's it.
Consequently, the following season was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Darlington finished just 4 points above the bottom of the league, only narrowly avoiding relegation to the conference, and attendances slumped back down to almost pre-Reynolds levels, despite being the cheapest tickets in all the Football League.
I wonder
why.
The
club's attendances had risen from 3,180 on average to 5,523 under Reynolds in his debut campaign, but they flatlined at around 3,800 for the next 2 seasons, as Darlington recorded consecutive bottom half finishes. This was a big problem for both Reynolds and for Darlington, who were in the process of building one of the largest stadiums outside of the Premier League.
No. You have to be pretty successful in order to get a stadium, okay? You need to be able to draw in people to build a stadium. That's the problem. Like, I don't understand, dude. I really, really don't understand.
Which he had hoped would be at least 60% full. Before we come to Reynolds' ill-fated solution to fix that particular problem, I really have to address the elephant in the room.
Gotcha.
Anyone who builds a 25,000-seater football stadium in Darlington isn't all there in the head. Even if virtually every other aspect of Reynolds' wildly delusional 5-year plan had come to fruition, Darlington still wouldn't have been able to fill a 25,000-seater stadium or even have come remotely close, except perhaps for the odd game against the likes of Liverpool and Manchester United.
Here's the thing. If you built it up so that all of a sudden they're having a full stadium, which looked like capacity was 10,000 from the previous look of it. If you're drawing consistently 10,000, and there's people outside standing wanting to come in and blah blah blah, then you can expand to maybe 15,000. Add an extra 5,000 if you're able to get. Okay, and I understand they said they renovated, but if you're able to get 15,000, then you could maybe push for 20. And especially if you're in the third tier, don't be making that kind of statement. Okay? I'm just saying.
To think that they could do so against Torquay United and Halifax Town is to have lost all touch with reality. It is pure, unadulterated insanity of a kind you may more typically expect to find in someone who has suffered a particularly traumatic accident involving a barbecue skewer which has penetrated their skull and removed 95% of their brain function, leaving behind only the 5% that comes up with increasingly ludicrous ideas, and not a single bit of the part that tells you to stop being so absolutely remarkably stupid. Anyhow, back to Mr. Reynolds and his big plan to get bums on seats ahead of the big move. His genius solution to unlock the 21,000 fans Darlington needed to find from somewhere was to sign a big-name marquee signing that would get a load of press attention and motivate people to go and see Darlington.
Who's going to want to go to the third division to play in a 10,000 seat stadium in which you keep trash talking your players with the lowest fucking ticket prices in the league? In any league.
All on their own. In fairness, it isn't the worst idea in the world, and it has worked for clubs in the past. The issue for Reynolds was the fact that Darlington were a bottom half team in the fourth tier of the English game.
That's another thing. Okay, so fourth tier. Not the, did I say third tier? But like, you're in the bottom of it. Get your team up at least to the third tier. Then maybe you can make it into a FIFA game. Unless you're owned by Ryan Reynolds and who's the other guy? and you get Wrexham United into fucking the rest of the world. They're like, what, half a star? 1 star? I haven't played FIFA yet because technically you have to spend an extra $20 than the normal. No, $40. Hold up. You gotta pay an extra 40 fucking Nah, that's some bullshit, EA. Nah, I ain't paying $40 for some extra bullshit. Oh, but you also get it 4 days early. People have been playing that for like a week now. Like, what do you mean 4 days early?
Undeterred, in the summer of 2001, Reynolds went on an all-out charm offensive to try and sign England legend and one of the North East's most famous sons, Paul Gascoigne. Gazza was contracted to Premier League side Everton at the time, but he had had a rotten time with injuries, and it looked as though his time with the Toffees would be coming to an end. That was indeed the case, but Gascoigne and his agent reportedly felt Reynolds only wanted to sign Paul as a marketing stunt, which was, of course, the case, so they turned Darlington down and Gazza signed for Burnley instead. Next up, if anything, Reynolds turned his attention to an even bolder piece of transfer business, eyeing up former Newcastle United star Tino Asprilla. The Colombian superstar had already lit up the top tier of English football in the North East, as well as starring in a fantastic Parma team in Serie A. But he too appeared to be out of favour following brief stints in Mexico and in Brazil. His time in Darlington would be even briefer. Reynolds spent 7 weeks trying to sign Asprilla, offering him a contract reported to be worth an eye-watering £17,000 a week, which would be unthinkable in League Two now, let alone 20 years ago, along with an apartment and some other temptations. At one point, Reynolds must have presumed that he had his man, giving interviews alongside him with Sky Sports and parading him around Feetums before kick-off in a game. Asprilla was actually listed in the Darlington squad in the programme notes the following week after being unveiled to fans, since they had to be printed almost a week in advance, despite the fact that by that time everyone knew the deal had fallen through. Reynolds said he was gutted, meanwhile Asprilla said Reynolds had offered him one contract over the phone and a totally different one, and even a different apartment, once he had met him in person. The whole thing contributed to the image of Reynolds and of Darlington as being a desperate mess, flailing around, waving pound notes in front of players' faces, and still getting rejected.
This is what I'm saying. Where's their youth team? Where's their youth system? Speaking of which, he looks young as hell. How old is he? He looks like he might be like maybe 17, 18. I mean, get in there, man. Get started quickly, early. You know, like, I understand. I feel like this is the greatest advice. Like, don't act like, even if you're desperate, don't act desperate. You know, that goes perfect for like dating, because nobody likes someone that's desperate, no matter how desperate you are. People don't like that, you know. So when you act desperate and you do all these things, people are gonna be like, "Oh, that's quite a turnoff. I don't know if I want to go there." But find other people from different leagues. You know, there's the MLS. Everyone keeps shitting on the MLS, but I'm sure MLS is better than League 3, League 2, League 1. I mean, you know, like, I feel like some of MLS's best teams could compete in the championship. Some of MLS worst teams could really dominate in League 1. I'm trying to think, because it keeps getting changed on me. So it goes Premier League, Championship, League 1, League 2, right? Then League 3, 4, 5, a million, and everything. So League 1, is the third division. I think that most MLS teams could dominate in League 1. I say that. I feel like they can. But I don't know.
A year later, the club went back in for Gascoigne, but failed once again, the Italian IT star, instead choosing to head to China. When Asprilla was asked, live on Sky Sports, what he felt of Reynolds' plans to take Darlington to the Premier League, he just started laughing. Perhaps that ought to have been a warning sign. By this point, unsurprisingly, and indeed a fair bit earlier in truth, fans were starting to lose faith in Reynolds, whilst some remained fearful to publicly criticise him at all due to the repeated threats. Almost all could scarcely believe the club was still pressing ahead with a 25,000-seater stadium. Nonetheless, they did just that. And on August 15th, 2003, Darlington played their first game at the very humbly named Reynolds Arena. This is a man, it should be noted, who named his business George Reynolds UK and had his offices headquartered at the George Reynolds Industrial Park. So, the Reynolds Arena really ought not to have come as much of a shock to anyone, and in truth, it's a wonder that he didn't try to change the team's name to George Reynolds' Quakers. That first game drew an enormous crowd by Darlington standards, as fans flocked from far and wide to see this bizarre venue on the outskirts of the town, which Reynolds described as the best stadium in Europe. The capacity had to be limited for that opening game, as it would always be, due to insufficient parking and public transport accessibility. But 11,006...
Okay, so when you're building a stadium, you need to make sure that at least those things are put into place so you can draw as many fans as possible. Make sure that there's a train running there, however often. Make sure there's enough parking so that everyone can be there. Make sure that there's buses that go there every so often if you need it. Like the first thing that comes to mind is Inter Miami. They've had like, I remember when they were first, before they were even given the expansion side, Beckham was working on literally the transportation, and that was a huge thing that I remember hearing about back in the day. Back in the day when that was like a couple years ago. Like 3, maybe 4 years ago or something.
600 fans still turned up to see Darlington lose 2-0 against Kidderminster Harriers. The fact that Darlington lost that game and put in such an insipid performance was really the final nail in the coffin of Reynolds' plans to have over 15,000 fans in the ground for anything other than an Elton John concert. Darlington never recorded even half that amount for a home game ever again.
Damn.
Their average attendance for the season following the move rose by less than 2,000, up to just 5,023. That would still be the highest average attendance the club ever managed at the ground, bearing in mind the fact that Feetham's itself could accommodate 8,500 fans. In their first season in their new ground, without a marquee signing, and with attendances only having increased very marginally, Darlington finished lower in the third division than they had done the previous season, recording a lowly 18th place finish.
Damn.
It was almost as if the remarkably brain-dead Reynolds Arena wasn't the footballing mecca and silver bullet that the Quakers' resident clown had boldly predicted. Build it and they will come was the mantra, but Reynolds built it and no one came. Well, some people did, but mostly just those that already went, and even then, most of them would soon give up. In their last 3 seasons at the Reynolds Arena, later renamed the Darlington Arena, now the Northern Echo Arena, Darlington twice averaged under 2,000 fans in the stadium, and only narrowly eclipsed that figure in the other one. Their lowest league attendances left the stadium roughly 95% empty. Reynolds once boasted that he almost called the stadium the White Elephant, since that's what everyone kept calling it before it was built, and he just loved proving people wrong. Perhaps, if he had done that, people might at least not have remembered which idiot decided to build a 25,000-seater football stadium in Darlington 20 years on.
Yeah,
I'm not being very charitable. They definitely would still have remembered, since only one man would be mad enough to do something like that. Following their lowly 18th place finish in their first season in their mammoth but largely empty new ground, Darlington's on-field performances did actually start to improve, but off the pitch, the club was in chaos. Unbeknownst to most supporters, throughout his time owning the club, Reynolds seemingly wasn't just losing his marbles, but also his vast personal fortune and business empire. Even in the 1999-2000 season, Reynolds' first season owning the club, in which he boasted profits of over £1 million a month at his company accounts actually revealed that George Reynolds UK Limited actually lost £2.5 million that year.
Damn.
The following year, the business lost £9 million, but still transferred £1.9 million more over to the football club. That would be the last full financial year in which the business operated, going into liquidation in 2003, owing creditors £3.4 million. When the creditors came in to investigate what exactly had happened at GR UK, they determined that the £7 million Reynolds had put into Darlington, along with the £1.5 million that he transferred to another business that he also owned, was irresponsible at a time when the business was a loss-making enterprise, and that it was to the detriment of GR UK's creditors. The conclusion was that the money that Reynolds had put into Darlington was improper, and consequently, he was banned from being a director or working in senior management at any company in the United Kingdom for the next 8 years. It turned out that Reynolds had actually run out of money whilst building the 25,000-seater Reynolds Arena, and that consequently, to stave off personal bankruptcy, the man who promised never to take on any debt at Darlington had taken a £4 million loan from the Sterling Consortium on behalf of the club to finish the project. In January 2004, just 5 months after Darlington had moved into the Reynolds Arena, the man himself, George Reynolds, resigned as both chairman and director of the club, amidst pressure from supporters. In doing so, he left Darlington high and dry, needing to find £4 million to repay the loan Reynolds had taken out to build a stadium that no one in Darlington actually wanted.
That's a bit fucked up. I feel like Reynolds himself should be the one that has to pay that back, not the club. Yeah. That's terrible.
It was as if Reynolds had pardoned Darlington from a death sentence in 1999 and then executed the club himself in 2004. Darlington fans finally got the chance to witness Paul Gascoigne at the Reynolds Arena, ironically, during the same month that Reynolds left the club. Some famous faces, including the likes of Gazza, Chris Waddle, and Kenny Dalglish, featured in a benefit game to try and raise funds to ensure the survival of the struggling club, who had entered administration before Reynolds resigned and were now facing a winding-up order that threatened their very existence. The game saw by far the largest attendance ever witnessed at the stadium for a football match, as over 14,000 fans turned up, raising more than £100,000 and ensuring the club's survival for at least the next 2 months. The club's total debts were believed to be around £20 million, due to Reynolds claiming that he was owed £15 million individually. When the season came to an end, the Sterling Consortium, who had provided Darlington with that £4 million loan, took control of the club, with company director Stuart Davies becoming Darlington's new chairman. The Sterling Consortium had been founded in 2002 in an attempt to capitalise on the fall of ITV Digital, which left football with a major financial black hole. Sterling offered struggling clubs high-interest loans, which they inevitably struggled to repay.
Yeah.
Darlington weren't the only club to fall victim to Sterling's loans. They also caused major issues at Barnsley, Chesterfield, and Cambridge United. Under Davies, Darlington's fortunes improved markedly on the pitch as they recorded successive 8th place finishes in League Two, only missing out on a playoff spot by virtue of goal difference in the 2004-05 season, with 3 teams all tied on 72 points. In 2006, following
bad.
2 seasons in which Davies had stabilised Darlington's performances and improved the relationship with fans, without having fully addressed the club's financial difficulties, he sold the club to the property tycoon George Houghton. An ambitious multi-millionaire named George, Houghton arrived with a 5-year plan, setting off alarm bells so soon after Reynolds' reign, though his more modest plan was only for the club to be, quote, banging on the door of the championship within the next 5 years. Under Houghton, Darlington started spending money again, and there was even talk of a multi-million pound academy setup being built. That never materialised, and at one point, Houghton was suspended by the FA for breaching FA rules, appointing a chief executive instead of him.
I was thinking, like, there you go, that they're going to start doing well, but I guess not.
Things got even stranger when rumours began to circulate that Houghton was trying to buy Leeds United and Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch in California, both of which he denied. His reign ended with Darlington going back into administration in 2009 before his deputy chairman, Raj Singh, who now owns League Two side Hartlepool Town, became the club's new owner and chairman. However, during Singh's first season at the helm, Darlington lost their Football League status, with relegation to the conference. In 2011, supporters were finally given something to celebrate with a dramatic last-minute victory against Mansfield Town at Wembley Stadium in the final of the FA Vase, but all the while, off-field issues dominated the talk of the town. Darlington were no strangers to sub-2,000 crowds in a 25,000-seater stadium, which looked absolutely absurd in the non-league game, and in 2012, Singh put Darlington into administration for the 3rd time in less than a decade. This would be the last time. In May 2012, Darlington failed to agree a CVA and were expelled from the Football Association and wound up in a high court. The club no longer existed. A Phoenix club was founded, but prohibited by the FA from using the same name. They called themselves Darlington 1883 instead and started out life in the 9th tier of the English game. At this point, Darlington left the Reynolds Arena, by this stage the Darlington Arena, behind, which was sold to the local rugby union club. 3 promotions in 4 seasons secured a speedy recovery to the National League North, but Darlington are currently, somewhat ironically, unable to win promotion into the National League due to their ground not meeting league standards. They have gone from having by far the biggest stadium in the non-league game to one that isn't up to league standards. The club is owned by the fans, and in 2017, they were given approval from the FA to rename themselves Darlington FC once again. When Darlington's house of cards came crashing down, so too did Reynolds and his fortune. He lost everything and was arrested on suspicion of money laundering in June 2004 when £500,000 cash was found in the boot of his car. Reynolds subsequently launched a business which manufactured and sold adult bedroom furniture, which appeared to be normal furniture to the unwitting eye, but could also be turned into a BDSM sex dungeon. That didn't last very long, since Reynolds pleaded guilty in court to charges of tax evasion and was sentenced to 3 years back in prison. He lost his entire fortune and spent the rest of his days living in a modest apartment in Chesterley Street, County Durham, where he ran a small e-cigarette business. In September 2019, less than 2 years before his death, Reynolds found himself back in court, where he was found guilty of harassment after visiting a female counsellor who refused to give him planning permission to build holiday homes at the counsellor's own home. old habits die hard, I suppose. That is it for today's video, but thank you all as ever for watching. I know it was a long...
Jeez. That's kind of funny. Not even gonna lie. Like, did he not have like a counselor for the sport to be like, hey, this is what you need to do in order to have a successful team? I feel like the second guy that took over after him would have been able to do a better job. Like, he was more realistic, but what happened again? He got arrested or something. He got charged with something. It's just Darlington. Like, they need a break. Someone needs to come along. Someone with Ryan Reynolds type of status or something needs to come along and fucking take over Darlington and fucking help him. Maybe if I become a bajillionaire or some shit, I'll help. I'll build a 30,000. No, I like the priority would be building a youth system, making the team go out and build a name in the community, and start from there. Those are like the two like ground. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. That's the foundation, not ground. That's the foundation of building a team. Making sure that your city is behind you, and making sure that the youth, that even if they're not going to play for you, you can make money off of selling your kid. That just sounds bad, doesn't it? Selling your kids. But selling your young talent to top clubs, whether it's Man City, whether it's even championship sides like Norwich or whoever, you know, like Ipswich. Like, wait, are Norwich in the Premier League? Hold on. I feel like they're in the Premier League, but they're doing terrible. But that's what I'm saying. Like, for example, you can stick to like sending them up to championships and make money that way. It's just, you know, for some reason it feels like people don't seem to understand that. Have they not tried to play FIFA before? You know, because that's just where I keep going. FIFA. Yeah, no, Norwich is in last place with no points right now. Anyways, if I had the money, Darlington, I'd help you out for a season. It's like, just one season. Why just one season? I don't know. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, rating if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more sports content, and I'm going to be doing a lot more music related stuff as well. Thank you so much for joining me here, and just that's a crazy story. If there's any other stories like this that you'd like me to react to, let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time.